Hello and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey, and I'm here to talk with some friends about women's professional road cycling. Loren Rowney, hello.
G'day. It's strange that it's not daily podcasts anymore. Was kind of missing it.
Yeah, back on my computer screen.
But you're still in the spirit of Tour de France, I'll just say. You can explain why.
I wore my polka dot shirt just for today. Gracie?
Hey friends, it's nice to be back, but I really enjoyed listening to you on those dailies. That was one of my highlights.
Thank you.
The next day to listen to them.
We missed you. We missed you a lot.
We did. We really did. But we got to meet some of your colleagues. Actually, we were mostly staying in the same areas as them and the one hotel. So felt like you were there in spirit, definitely. And they were missing you a lot.
And Matt Neef is here. Also someone who we missed a lot at the tour this year.
Hi, it's good to be back. It's been a little while, but thank you for having me. And I'd just echo what Gracie said. It was an absolute treat to listen to the two of you and Tilda every day at the tour. So you did an amazing job, and it's very cool to listen every day. And I was very jealous not to be there.
Can confirm I'm not as good of a co-pilot as you, Matt. Definitely
she had one
in the
job.
car. I was reminded of this.
Well, the thing that people don't realize is that the actual reporting on bike racing is the easy part of covering the tour. It's all the stuff around it. It's the hard stuff.
At one point, I don't remember which stage it was, but it was definitely after stage 4 because it was when I started to fall apart a little bit. We were lost somewhere, and I just started saying, this would never happen if Matt was here. I was like, this is the time when I miss Matt the most. Poor Loren and Tilda were just trying to help me. And I was...
That's a good friendship tester.
We're back. The tour is over. We're still going to talk about it a bit today. There's still some stuff we have on our minds. Gracie and Matt obviously were not on the daily podcast, so really, really keen to hear their perspective of the race, watching from home, and how they felt about how everything went down with the whole thing. But we're going to start the episode today with a bit of Plouay, Classic Lorient Agglomération, otherwise known as GP de Plouay for us who have been around for a while, was on Saturday. Kind of one of the final one-day classics of the year before Worlds, and has usually in the past been used as kind of a tune-up race for Worlds, but being so close to the tour this year, we had a couple big names at the race, but for the most part, it was the riders who didn't get to race the tour and are still kind of gearing up for the final races of the season. Plus some riders that did race the tour. Charlotte Cool was there, 2 stage wins for her at the tour. She was there. Elisa Bosma was there. It's this really interesting race that can either be a solo rider, a small group, or a bunch sprint. And in the last couple of years, we've had some really exciting racing with solo riders or like small groups kind of going off the front, because after COVID, they shortened the race down to only being the final circuits that include some pretty good climbs, some really technical descents. But this year we were back to the normal course, and last year as well. And so it came to a pretty big bunch near the end of the race, but 3 riders clipped off the front in the finale, and Misha Bredewald took the win for the second year in a row, followed by Chloe Daggert and Liana Lippert. Balsamo came in 9 seconds later to win the bunch sprint. Yeah, good bike race.
Where do we start with?
I want to start with Misha, because I think this was a huge win for her off the back of such a emotional Tour de France Femmes for SC Works. They had some really high highs and some really low lows, and we're going to talk a bit about the post-race backlash that the team has received. But for Misha, this was her final race in the European Champions jersey. She's going to lose that, well, either keep it or lose it really soon, but we'll be back in the SC Works kit soon. So to win the race with the European champ jersey on, her final race in that jersey, in theory, was a big deal. And last year she won it in a reduced bunch sprint, but this year she was really one of the strongest riders in the race. And it was cool to see her win after all the work that she put in for Vollering at the tour, and just kind of shows the depth of that team and how strong she is as a rider. And just how much promise she has for the future because she's still so young. And I think because she, is wearing that jersey, she had such a successful year last year, and she's had such a strong year this year. She's kind of like forgotten a bit how young she is and how new she is. So I just love to see her win and her emotion after winning as well, and just how excited she was.
She's such a good rider for taking the opportunities that are presented to her. There's few riders in the bunch that capitalize on those opportunities as well as she does. And that just talks to her talent, I guess. But, she's just come from the Tour where she was firmly in a support role there. She gets her opportunity at Plouay where the team's riding for her. And, she's defending champion. She won last year in that sprint from 30 riders or something like that. And, was obviously a marked rider, but to take a gamble, as she said, with that late group and to win it a different way than she did last year, just shows her quality as a rider. And again, to take those opportunities when they come is something that not a lot of riders are able to do. So, very cool to see that from her. And she's got a massive future ahead of her. And as we've talked about in the past, she's got another 3 years with the team after this one. So, very, very exciting for that team to see her continuing winning like that.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Matt. Because for a rider like we just said, she was really strong in the Tour in supporting Demi in her ambitions to win GC, and then basically a week later to switch that mindset from going like worker all week, recovering, coming into this race and thinking this is a race I want to win again, and then win it in a different way to the way she's won it before. She's very versatile in what she can do on the bike. But you see quite often with these young riders that go to these big teams where, of course, when you're young, you are put in that position where you need to sort of earn your spot in the team and earn your right to get a leadership position. So to be able to switch between the two definitely shows just, what's the word, like her character and just her future is bright, basically, because we've seen some younger riders as well not be able to cope with that pressure and being able to switch from, say, a domestique to the rider who's actually going for the win on that day.
Yeah, and we know that SD Works is losing a couple riders at the end of this year, and Misha, as Matt said, is signed on through 2027. So with the strength that she's shown, it'll be, the team can put a lot on her next year. I think as a 24-year-old, I think she's one of the ones who is equipped to handle more pressure from the team and could probably do well with it. So she's, the future of the team in a way.
Yeah, I expect, and I'll say it now, predictions for 2025, she's going to win some big classics.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, and if not next year, then a few years down the line for sure. And like you said, Lauren, she's such a versatile rider, to be able to win those sprints, to be good on the hills, to be that big engine as well, good time trialist. Yeah, she's got a very well-rounded skill set, and that's only going to improve as she goes along. And
she was one of the strongest riders in the race, because even earlier on in 50 kilometers to go, there was the move that Elise Longoborghini really started with an attack on one of the climbs, and it brought out a group of heavy hitters that included the three that ended up winning the race or fighting for the win in Misha, Liana Lippert, and Chloe Dygert, but also Shirin Van Anrooy and Amber Crack, and Misha made it into that group pretty easily. So she was feeling good on the day, and to follow a move by Elise Longoborghini is, a pretty impressive feat in and of itself. And I was surprised that move actually didn't stick longer. I mean, I guess they weren't cooperating with each other very well, but it was such a strong group of riders that I think normally you would see something like that stick, especially because a lot of the biggest teams were represented. We had Canyon SRAM, we had FDJ, we had Movistar, we had Little Trek, and obviously SC Works. So all the top teams were there, but maybe that was why it didn't work, because it was just too many heavy hitters in that move, and it came back really, really quickly. But Amber Crack was able to really capitalize on the distance that they got from the beginning, and she had a strong solo move as well. I mean, I thought for a minute there, I thought we were going to see Amber Crack win the race solo.
Yeah, she got around 2 minutes, didn't she? Or more than 2 minutes, I think, over the peloton at one point.
Yeah, and I think when she came through with one lap to go, it was still out at just over a minute, so it could have gone either way. It is a hard circuit, but we have seen solo winners before, and of course, if the group behind isn't cooperating and there's too much gambling going on, then that's when the solo win can sort of win the move.
Trek were so committed though to a Balsamo victory, and we saw at the end of the race that, you know, had there not been 3 riders off the front, then perhaps she would have won the race. She won the bunch sprint, but they really burnt riders early in the race to try to keep things together and keep moves in check. You know, we had a lot of attacks from Human Powered Health as well. Audrey Cordon-Ragot, the hometown hero, she was off the front as well. And Little Trek did everything in their power to try to control that race. But when the winning move went by Liana Lippert and Misha and Chloe followed Lippert, they really couldn't match. And it was Sheeran and Balsamo who were the next 2 riders on the road trying to chase that down, but they just couldn't get there.
Yeah, I liked that Trek had the confidence to play it a bit offensive and not just wait for the finale. They just didn't quite have the legs on the day, but I don't think that they did anything wrong. You could say they should have been more conservative, but that's kind of boring and not their style. And on a good day, their tactics do work quite a lot of the time. So I think that they just didn't quite have it, but it wasn't for lack of trying or for poor tactics. I'm sure they're disappointed, but all in all, like that team's, you know, had a pretty good year so far. So I think that Plouay is just one of those races that it's at such a weird point of the year. I always had really crappy legs for this race, which was always frustrating, but it's just like you've often come off something else bigger and then you're maybe in a build back towards Worlds or something, and it's just in this real dead spot of the season. And that's often why I think we see some lesser favourites win it. They've just got the timing different because of having different training camps or not having done one of the bigger races that have just happened. So yeah, I think that you can't read into this race as a form guide very often, in my opinion.
I think that was why I wasn't surprised at all to see Liana Lippert kind of being the main instigator of that final move, because she's come into the season so late and obviously came into the Tour with relatively good form. She won a stage last year, and I think everyone expected more of her this year, but given that she's coming back from injury and she had a really late start to the year, it makes total sense that she's peaking now and kind of finding her form now, and her attack at the end there on that final climb was just stunning. I mean, she looked so strong, and it was a perfectly timed move. Movistar was really behind her for that moment in the race, and Misha said after the race that she knew exactly when Liana was going to attack because Movistar was leading it out, and so she knew where to be. But yeah, she's one of those riders that, just like you said, Gracie, like she's had a different season to everyone else, and so now is when her legs are coming around.
And equally impressive by Chloe Dygert, who's just come off, you know, the Olympics, the Tour de France Femmes, working hard all week for Cassia and Canyon SRAM, and she had a fantastic ride as well. And it's, you know, it's interesting because there were conversations at the Tour de France Femmes about, you know, whether she would sign on with Canyon SRAM again. And because now that we're out of that Olympic cycle and it's 4 years till Los Angeles, these track riders have a bit more freedom to dedicate their seasons fully to the road. So we're going to see some interesting moves, I think, from some riders. And I think as well in 2025, you'll probably see some of those like pure trackies emerging on the road again and doing some big things.
I really enjoyed Chloe's attack just under 1K to go when she realized she had a little gap and she might as well just keep going, like push it harder. And you never attack like that. You never attack off the front. And the head-on shot as well, you're kind of like, oh, what's she doing? And then the overhead shot saw her tearing away from those other two. You could just see how much power she's got, especially seated power. And I love that the different camera angles can tell such a different story.
Yeah, and I mean, Gracie, you know that finish really well. It's downhill. So to be able to do that, it's even more impressive.
Yeah.
Because you just wouldn't pull that off normally. But there are only few riders like Chloe Dygert in the peloton.
Yeah, I mean, the three of them worked so well together from the moment that Chloe and Misha joined Liana up the road. They were working so well together up until they passed that 1K to go banner. And then they were just kind of looking at each other. And Chloe, being probably the greenest rider of the three, was like, well, I'm just going to go then if you guys are going to look at each other. And I think Chloe's move also helped the three of them stay away, because otherwise, I mean, the peloton was not that far behind them at that point, and Liana had to work really hard to try to close that gap. And Misha just capitalized on the fact that Liana did all the work. Misha wasn't even pedaling while Liana was trying to chase Chloe down, and then she used that momentum from the downhill to start her sprint and came around Chloe and took the win. And it was just like, it was such a great final 900 meters of bike racing.
I think we've seen it in this race before. I don't know what edition, probably multiple times. There has been like a small group off the front. And like I just mentioned, with that fast downhill run into the finish, if you do hesitate at that moment and the bunch is coming so fast from behind, you can lose the race. Like we've seen, I think people get caught in that final straight there. So really good by Liana Lippert. I think she was just in her mindset, if I don't go now and I hesitate, the podium's probably gone as well. The bunch kick.
Yeah, what happened?
Yeah, well, behind the three that were fighting for the win, yeah, you had a bunch sprint, and kind of because of how the road is laid out, this sprint is always a bit chaotic. There's riders coming from behind with more speed, and as the riders in the front are kind of hitting the final little tiny kick up to the line or false flat, they're losing speed. And there was like just so much chaos on the road with, the riders that hit it first kind of opening up their sprint and riders coming around the side. And it looked like Cool maybe dropped a chain or had a mechanical, because she just shot across the entire road and just like took out a ton of riders in the process. That crash looked...
And I was like rewatching the finish like a few times and just focusing on Cool, and not once did she look back. She was like looking at her gears, and I was just thinking, wouldn't you it's like she was completely unaware of the chaos that just ensued behind her.
And meanwhile there's a
did you guys notice
and
that?
meanwhile there's a rider behind her who's like catapulting over her handlebars, and she's just like looking down at her bike or whatever. Yeah.
She really like shot across the entire road, and it just looked like it from the first one. I was like, what the hell was she doing? Like the Fabio Jakobsen, no, who's the one who's like really nutty in the sprint? Jasper Philipsen, the Jasper Philipsen school of sprinting, like just shot across the entire road and just like bike checked everybody. Like it looks so crazy. But yeah, she did have a mechanical. So it wasn't on purpose, but the first shot of it, I was like, that did not look like a very nice move.
I think it's just the way that it was framed up as well in the shot of the finishing straight. So you've got Bredewald celebrating, you've got the two riders just behind her, and in the back you've got this just chaos just unfolding.
Yeah, it was definitely dramatic. It was a shame that we didn't get the overhead.
We would kind of see, even more chaos unfolding, but like maybe understand a bit more. But no, they only had the forward shot of the chaos of the sprint.
But most importantly, none of the riders were really injured, right? My heart for Ruby Rosamund Gannon, because she had such bad luck at the Tour. She's had
a rough couple of weeks.
Yeah. I just was like, not again.
Should we talk tour? I kind of want to start out talking about the tour by just hearing from Gracie and Matt. Like, I don't know, initial reactions, because we didn't get to hear from you guys all week, and we love your opinions.
Yeah, and there's just something. Yeah, I really want to hear what you guys were seeing from. Well, we were on the ground and watching the replay, but what your impressions were, and then after we have this chat, can we please talk about, why Demi's team hasn't been named, unless I've missed something, which I don't think I have.
Gracie, you want to go first?
All right. Well, first reactions. and I'm sure everyone can agree with this, it was not long enough. I felt like the storyline just built too quickly and was over too quickly. But that's, we've talked about that before. It would be nice to see the tour. I reckon 2 weeks with one rest day, that would be ideal. It's great that it's going to increase in days next year. And I hope that that keeps building 10 days up to 14 days. I don't think we're ever going to see a men's grand tour down to 14 days. So I don't think we're going to see that equality there. I don't think the women's tour needs to be 3 weeks, just quietly. Anyway, it was just such a great race. And from some of my friends working for SBS, they're getting a sense from on the ground from a production capacity that they felt like the level has jumped again. That's the feeling that we got last year as well. Year two, just wondering what that difference would be after that first new edition. And it's just so great to hear that the level of professionalism across the board, teams, access, production, it just feels like this great product that just gets better every time. And that was certainly the impression that I was getting as a couch Peloton viewer. It was just so cool to see so many fans on the side of the road. It looked like this amazing scene, just having so many people cheering every day on the side of the road. And the opening stages in the Netherlands certainly set a good scene and a good standard for the rest of the race. And then in terms of racing, I think the depth of talent also was on display. Like we see it now, in so many other races in the year, it's easy to see the level is improving and the depth of talent is improving, but it's so nice to have it showcased so well at this race. And to have those teams that, really stepped up and stood out last year continue to do so, such as the Phoenix team. It's such an amazing platform to tell stories, to inspire, and to create these great storylines and narratives and to propel, some of these women into like legitimate household names. It was awesome. So I certainly don't need to talk about the tactics and the breakdown and all that. You guys did such a good job, but as a whole product, I think we're really there now. Women's cycling is a legitimate product, and that's what we're seeing. And it's so great to see the ASO creating this product that is so audience friendly, and that the riders and the teams are also stepping up and making it a good product as well.
Point, Gracie, a question leading into the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift was, it was after the Olympics. It had been a huge sporting summer this summer with the Tour de France, then the Olympics, and then the Tour de France Femmes. And the question was always going to be not whether there would be crowds like we saw in Rotterdam, because we know the Netherlands are bike crazy, but how it would be by the time we got to France. And speaking to Kate Verno from Zwift, she said for the true fans of women's cycling, there was never a doubt. But there was certainly doubt from other people within the industry thinking that, people wouldn't come out. And that just certainly wasn't the case.
Well, taking a little step back, I felt like the Paris Games was the women's games. I thought this Olympics had such a beautiful overtone of feminine power and female achievement. And I think the flow on into the Tour de France Femmes really kept that momentum. And I felt like the appetite was still there for women's sport, not just women's cycling. So I really enjoyed that part because, by this point, we've watched the Tour de France men's, we've watched as much Olympics as we can tolerate. And then we had the women's edition. But I was not sported out by then at all, because I was so inspired by these female Olympians. I wanted to see more female powerful images, and we got that and some. So I was, quite emotional on some days of the Tour de France Femmes just watching, and I definitely cried when Cassia started crying once they confirmed that GC. And I was crying for Demi as well, actually. We're not shy about saying that we don't mind when SD Works gets beaten, but I I felt for her. You know, she did everything she could. She's a true champion. She is such an amazing athlete, and I felt really bad for her as well. And that's kind of the beauty of the sport. Like, that was good sport, and you have to, you know, take some of the tragedy with the victory in sport. And when you're a fan of so many different riders, it's hard not to feel all the feels, but that's what makes sport so good.
Yeah, 100%. And man, it's going to make for an exciting tour next year when she's on a different team and has got a point to prove, etc. That final stage was incredible. I misread the TV guide, and I thought it was finishing at midnight here in Australia. It did not finish at midnight. It was more like 2:30 or 3 a.m. It was yeah. I was so tired the next day, but
It started at midnight.
Coverage started. Why didn't they broadcast the whole race anyway? That last stage was just incredible. I mean, even just finishing the race on Alpe d'Huez was a thing of its own, you know, beauty. And then, you know, Abby, you wrote the day before that final stage how beautifully the race was poised, you know, with Demi chasing time and Gracie trying to hold on and finishing on Alpe d'Huez, and the GC kind of still to play for in the top 10, and it just delivered so much, that final stage. Just from start to finish, really, and those tense final moments of the last bit of the climb, and then waiting to have the result confirmed. Like, I certainly can't remember a better finish to a bike race. I mean, maybe part of that is recency bias. I'm wary of that, but it was just incredible. And like you said, Gracie, it was just good sport. It wasn't just good cycling. It wasn't just good Tour de France. It was just good sport, and it just makes you feel things. And like you, Gracie, I felt for Demi a lot. She had some horrible luck and things didn't go her way, and still rode like a champion. I think it's, for any other rider, if you win two stages of the Tour de France, including on Alpe d'Huez, you know, that's going to be your career. You've done the best thing you've ever done in your career. But for her, it was this horrible, bitter disappointment. And I think that in itself is fascinating. You know, obviously she had bigger goals, but there's just a lot of complexity and layering to the whole thing. And like I said, I think she'll come back next year with a real point to prove. And, you know, with all the musical chairs that's happening next season already, and, you know, Pauline from Bravo coming into the mix, and Van der Breggen coming back. Like, I mean, there's plenty of time to talk about all that, but I'm certainly excited about that prospect. I think that final stage was just incredible. And I think, there's a lot of things that stood out to me, but one of the big themes was just young and emerging riders really stepping up in a way that we haven't seen. Like, you know, we've seen Blancovas win races, but nothing as big as this. Puck Pieterse really confirming herself after an amazing spring. Cedrine Cabol, who, Abby, you might remember at last year's tour, we didn't even mention her the entire race until the final stage. And we're like, we should probably mention this woman who's in the white jersey, you know. And this year she just took this amazing step up. And Justine Hakira, who, you know, she's not as young a rider as those other ones, but she's probably newer to the sport than all of them and has ridden less than all of them. And for her to step up as well, like, just so many great performances like that, so many great riders to support and to be happy for when they did well. And it was just a lot to love. And even the sprints as well, seeing Charlotte Kool get back to winning and what that means for the sprints. Not only, you know, stage 2, we actually saw her and Weebisco head to head properly, but what that means going forward, having the two of them on more equal footing, is just so much to take away from the race. And it was just a joy to watch, really.
Yeah, I mean, Gracie mentioned the depth was on display, and that was really hard to miss with 3 stage winners who'd never won a World Tour race in their careers. And Blancovas has won World Tour races, but yeah, nothing at this level. So for those 4 riders, we had 2 stages won by the same riders, but both came with their own complete storylines. And Demi's surprise win in Rotterdam, where she was, you know, really close to home soil, but like literally like a few kilometers from home, was just such an incredible victory. And then, like Matt said, you know, the devastation of winning the final stage, but not the general classification. So it didn't feel like, you know, 2 stages won by Demi, because it was 2 completely different vibes at the end of both stages, and 2 stages won by Kool. But at the same time, the first one came with so much controversy with the sprint and the Weebus, will she actually be able to beat Weebus? And then she did beat Weebus, and those two storylines with the first two stages. So even though 4 of the stages were won by two of the same riders, it really didn't feel that way. So it just felt a lot like last year, where we had almost a different rider winning every single stage, and how big that felt and how cool it felt to have so much shakeup every single day. And this felt on a whole nother level from that. Like, it was really, really incredible to see just all the new riders on the scene. Phoenix stepped it up again this year, but so did AG Insurance. They were incredible. And to finish with Sarah Gigante in the top 10 at the end of the race was so cool to see. And like Little Trek, with their potentially disappointing week, but they still were able to get Gaia up there in the end. Like, the final stage, I wrote about how the GC was all to play for, but it really was, because the final podium was maybe 2 riders that we knew were going to be on the podium, but one that we really had written off because of the descents and because of the weather. And Paulina Roarkis, like the best performance of her career on that final stage, which is only going to mean big things for the future for her and also for Phoenix Sekunik. And every team was able to really capitalize on that final stage. And yeah, next year we'll have 9 stages. So next year it will be longer. We're going to have 2 of the stages will overlap the men, so that will come with its own conversation about how that's going to go. But I mean, 9 stages for the women is a big step forward. And I think the next big step they can make is start to finish live coverage, because I think that was something that was really frustrating throughout the week. They had the first 3 stages start to finish live, but we really need the whole week to be start to finish live. And this is something we've been pushing for as well with Paris-Roubaix Femmes avec Zwift. Both races are run by ASO, and for the men's versions of both races, it's start to finish live coverage of the entirety of the race, including 21 stages of the men. So yeah, we really just need the start to finish live coverage. And I think that's, in addition to the 9 stages next year, that's one of the things that the race really, really needs to focus on implementing for the future.
Yeah, it was pretty jarring to not have the whole of the Alpe d'Huez stage live. I was quite surprised by that. And I think maybe the fact that I was surprised by that maybe shows how far things have come in the last little while. I'm certainly not saying that things are perfect, because they're not. They need to improve. But I think, as Gracie said, we are seeing the overall package of the tour improve year on year. And, it was just an amazing bike race, full stop. So I think that, people are going to watch it. People are going to keep watching it. More people are going to watch it. And start to finish live coverage just seems like a no-brainer at this point.
The coverage that they do give us is really incredible. Someone mentioned to me during the Giro, the women's Giro, how, watching the women's stages and then watching the men's tour afterwards, it was jarring to see the difference in the quality of coverage. The shaky motorbikes, you can't really see what's going on in the Giro, and then the crisp, really high quality coverage of the men's tour. But the women's tour got the same, really, really high quality video pictures of the race. And it's one of the only races on the calendar that actually gets that. So yeah, I think, I assume at some point we will have start to finish live coverage, and it's just so important to the sport that we have that. But yeah, there were multiple stages where there were things happening and you were just like, bah, I want to see what's going on. I want to see how SD Works got 4 riders into the early move on the final stage. I want to see all the attacks that are going on the 4th stage. The 4th stage was bonkers from the beginning and we didn't get to see any of it. And I think it's doing a disservice to the sport a little bit that we on a stage this big where there are so many eyes on the race, because this is there's no sugarcoating around it. This is the most watched women's race in the calendar, even if it is only 3 years old. The name Tour de France comes with its whole territory of viewers that just don't really care about, Trofeo Alfredo Binda and the other races in the women's calendar, or the Giro or the Vuelta or any of those races. They just come for the tour. And I think not having that coverage is, taking something away from the women and the race that, we really we need it in the future.
And it's something we actually discussed on tour, was the fact that a lot of teams are now relying on this race. Like if we think of the Kolwahu, I'm probably saying the team's name incorrect now, but they have pitched it to their sponsors basically, or future sponsors, that like they're going for this wild card spot and they're going to have all eyes on the Tour de France. Like they can show the viewership numbers, how many millions of people are watching this race. And for smaller teams like that, there is a even more importance on having like the full race covered, because if we look at the men's racing, quite often the people going in those early moves or trying to make a move are these smaller teams. So that's their chance to sort of showcase to their sponsors their riders basically. And I just want to say, I do feel like, and I think I mentioned this maybe in the last podcast from the Daily podcast, that I really feel like the ASO have seen the true value in women's cycling and in this event in particular. And I do think that they want to see it grow themselves, because I got to meet the CEO and actually spend a bit of time with him. We even bumped into him on our final hike, and he was very, very enthusiastic about what he saw. And he said to me on the last evening that this was that final stage, like you were saying, Matt. He echoed your thoughts. Like it's the best finish he's seen in men's or women's cycling.
Yeah, when we ran into him on the mountain, he was just buzzing about women's cycling, and I hope that helps the race.
He even high-fived me.
He was so excited to see Loren. I thought maybe they'd been friends for like, I was like, oh, is this an old like team manager or something? I was really confused for a minute because it seemed like they'd known each other for years. That's what a 70-kilometer long bike ride from hell will do for you, I guess. There's so much value in this race. And I think, Zwift obviously saw it from the start, but I think the ASO really, really sees the value in it. So there's a big future for this race in women's cycling, and I can't wait to see what the players involved in the race actually do in the future, because there could be some changes, who knows, but it was really cool to see someone who has so much power in the governing body of the race so excited about what they'd witnessed. And I mean, the whole race just delivered, and I'm really glad that they're able to see that, because obviously we're coming from a place of like being longtime women's cycling fans. So we maybe are a bit biased, but I don't think in this case we are, because it seems like that's the general idea was, wow, this is one of the best bike races we've ever seen from people across the board.
Can I just jump in one more thing from the tour? I'll make it quick. It's only a small thing, but it just really stood out to me. Stage 6, Marianne Vos is up the road trying to get points for the sprint jersey, which she ended up getting. There's just a moment on that stage that just really stood out to me, because of all the reasons to love Marianne Vos, I think there's a lesson in there for a lot of young riders watching. She's in the break. She gets the points that she needed. The peloton catches the break that she's in. She gets dropped out the back. Sadrine Cabal goes off and wins the stage, whatever. Vos is languishing at the back, climbing the best she's ever climbed, but still off the back. Manages to fight her way back and then ends up getting second on the stage. She didn't need to do any of that. She'd gone out. She got the points that she needed. She'd drawn level with Charlotte Cool in the points jersey. She'd go on to win it, etc. But there was just like this tenacity to the way that she rode, and this determination to then get second as a result of that. I think that just really showed a lot of character, and I took a lot from that. And I know it's a tiny thing, but I feel like I'd be doing myself a disservice if I didn't shout out Marianne Vos at least once every time on this podcast. So I thought that moment was super cool.
You're right. It was such a good moment. And this is the second year in a row that Vos didn't win a stage of this race, which she was, it was a huge goal for her going in both last year and this year. And to walk away with the green jersey, Loren and I talked about it a tiny bit, that maybe she'll be slightly disappointed without a stage win, but the way that she fought for that green jersey was just amazing. And the sixth stage in particular. And then again on the seventh stage, going in the break to get those intermediate points.
Mm.
We had a lot of positivity after the race, but we also had a lot of negativity. And this is one of the stories that I've kind of been watching with interest in the last week, kind of since Vollering lost the race, and kind of playing back all the moments that her team and herself made decisions that would ultimately mean she didn't win yellow. And with so many eyes on the race and it being such a huge fixture in women's cycling post, like Gracie said, post Olympics, more attention on the race, more armchair experts watching the race. There was also an additional amount of backlash for SC Works and specific riders on SC Works. And I think it makes sense with how many people watched the race that there would be people who would feel the need to go into riders' Instagrams and comment really negative things on their photos and kind of bully them. It was only a matter of time until we were going to get that in women's cycling. I think we've been pretty privileged up to now, having a lot of the fans of the sport just really love a lot of the riders, and if they don't love them, they just don't say anything. And and that's kind of been a women's cycling thing, or a women's thing in general. And now we have, a lot of people being very heated towards SC Works and towards Weebus and Neef Black in particular. And yeah, it's just something that I wanted to bring up because it really bums me out to see. At first, I was kind of entertained by all the comments on the SC Works Instagram in particular, and a poorly worded final post that they made about Demi not winning the race. But the backlash has been just horrible to see, and especially for Neef and for Lorena. I'm not surprised, but it is just another additional feature, I guess, that comes along with so many eyeballs being on the sport. And the thing about, SC Works tactics and the decisions that were made by management and riders on the team that maybe lost Demi the race, and Demi's own decisions, she stood there for a long time after the crash. SC Works have been pulling shit like this for years. Like, they have always had questionable tactics. We've talked about it, a ton on this podcast for years about how they still win races even though their tactics are just make no sense at all. But they did it on the world stage with all, like, the most amount of people watching the sport that has ever watched the sport. So it only makes sense that they got the backlash they did, but I just hate that we now have that in women's cycling.
I guess we'll never know what was said as well over the radio from the directors. And I think that's something people forget too, is that those riders would have been given instruction. The first thing you do when you crash is you just get back on your bike, make sure you're okay, and get going. Of course, if you have a team leader, then normally you look around for the team leader to make sure that they haven't come down, and then you get back on your bike and try to get back as fast as you can. We're not going to know. What we do know is that things haven't been, at least from the outside, haven't looked that good within the SD Works Pro Time camp. I have been told by one of the staff members that it's just the media creating an unnecessary storm around what's happening, and that actually everyone is fine, which I would argue is,
of course they're going to say that to you, the media.
I don't know. I think yeah. Well, offline, I'll say who was the one that said that to me. But and then I think Gracie will probably, yeah, right. But yeah, I don't know. I've sort of, I guess this week, because I've zoned out a little bit from the women's cycling thing, I haven't been thinking about it too much. But yeah, I'm curious what your comments actually are, Matt and Gracie, watching it from, because it was a huge point of discussion on the tour, basically. I mean, every day people were talking about what was happening with SD Works, but I think it's funny, the comments, I don't know if it was Lorena, she said, oh, but she'll make it back up all that time that she lost. And I thought that was kind of disrespectful to the competition.
Yeah, I don't know, like, it's hard to separate what we know just from the outside of that team and maybe what we know from our own experiences in racing and gossip and all of that over the years. But my very first thought was not that the riders on SD Works had done the wrong thing, but the rate, what they were getting in their ears or not getting in their ears, because my thoughts are biased, I guess, to who's in the car. So it's hard for me not to think that was really the main problem. And I am really sad to see some riders getting that bullying online, because actually, like, despite SD Works having questionable tactics in races, something that you can't deny them is how professional each rider is in how they execute whatever their role is. And I feel like every rider on that team does, even if they don't like each other, which we don't really know because they don't give us much, but even if they don't like each other, they're very professional when they're racing. And to have Demi, lost for teammates in that moment, and it wasn't the first time this year, it's really hard not to put two and two together and think that that's coming from higher up, not necessarily just from the riders. Sure, there could be a few riders have got their nose out of joint for one reason or another, but like overall, they always ride pretty professionally. So yeah, disappointing. And they're certainly also not known for their good wording in interviews or posts as well. So we're pretty hard on them, but I think maybe 5 years ago, you could kind of see why they were having some weaknesses there in those communications. But now I think you have to be a bit more tight in that. And maybe they're just not, maybe I don't know, I'm just thinking off the top of my head now, maybe the fact that they've been so closed to the media for so long is actually becoming a weakness for them, in that they don't handle these situations that well.
Oh, I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I mean, I think Gracie nailed it, but one thing I did write down is that I think I mentioned this in a previous episode. I just really hope Demi is writing a tell-all book about this, or that she will at some point, or that she does a big tell-all interview, because man, there's going to be a lot to talk about. And yeah, I'm kind of like, I definitely agree that their tactics at times are weird at the very least, and baffling at others, and whatever. But I am conscious of like putting too much of our own perspective on it. Like, we can never know exactly what's going on. We can never know everything that's going on. And I think my natural inclination is maybe to give people too much of the benefit of the doubt sometimes. But what I really want to see is just her telling all. And I think she's too professional to do that the day she changes teams, for example. But years down the track, when she's retired, maybe she feels like she can tell that story. And I think it'll be a pretty good one. I
would love to go to Switzerland and hang out with her for a week, and her dog and her camper van, and just talk and record everything, and then give it back to Abby and go, take this, use it.
Yeah, Loren actually, Loren displayed an incredible ability to just be able to like jump in and have incredible conversations with, the riders immediately after the race. That I get, like, people might not know this about me. I am an introvert. I don't like talking to people, despite my chosen profession. And the scrum at the end of bike races is my worst nightmare. And so handing Loren my recording device and just being like, I want you to go talk to that person, was just the best thing that's ever happened to me. Yeah, it was great.
I loved my daily missions.
No, I really liked something that Brody Chapman said on the Domestiques podcast with Matilda Reynolds, actually, about how this was just, SD Works came into this race with multiple ambitions. They had Lorena Wiebes, who wanted to win stages. They had Demi, who wanted to win the overall. They had other riders that wanted to do other things. And that's been a problem for them and the Dutch national team many, many, many times. And this is the time that it just got the best of them, because you had Lorena Wiebes, who was there to win stages, lost the 2 opening stages that had her name written all over it, and then was going into the final 5 kilometers of a stage that she could probably also have won not knowing, what was going on, really the situation on the road, because things were unfolding so fast. So of course, Wiebes isn't going to stop and wait when she thinks she can smell victory. She's a sprinter. If they think that they can win a race, they're going to do everything they can to win that race. And the team was clear with her that her goal was winning stages. So she wasn't about to stop and wait and see what was happening when the race was happening right in front of her. And she wouldn't have known the group up the road who was in that group, because the communication over the radio, from what we've heard, was so bad. So, I think that blaming her for not stopping even after what she said, that she had seen Demi go down, is yeah, but you can't quite blame a sprinter for wanting to win a bike race. And the team had that ambition. Whereas Canyon SRAM, if you look at their ambitions for the race, they had only one ambition. They weren't there to win stages. They weren't there with multiple leaders. Of course, they would have probably loved having Neef Bradbury in the conversation in the GC had she not crashed, on an earlier stage. But they were really ultimately there to win yellow, and they were there to do it with Cassia. And that was their only goal. So going into the race with multiple leaders, yeah, it can work sometimes with multiple ambitions over multiple different aspects of racing, but it didn't work for them in this instance.
Yeah, and I think Canyon SRAM they would have loved to win the time trial as well with Chloe, but her doing well there didn't mean that she wasn't working for somebody else on that day, given the individual nature of that challenge. So, yeah.
I mean, it was the same with Grace. FDJ would have loved to win the time trial with Grace, but their goal was Evita Music from the very beginning. There was no...
Yep.
They didn't have any other ambition than Evita. And the time trial is, its own completely other conversation. Anyway, I just wanted to touch on it because it's been bumming me out.
Unfortunately, there was a little bit of it on Karsha's posts as well on Instagram. Just a lot of people being very negative about how she didn't deserve to win, and does she really think she can claim this victory and stuff like that, which, obviously very short-sighted and just ill-informed, but also really disappointing to see.
Oh, really? I didn't... Oh, that's awful.
I think what people don't realize as well with this is, even if, I think I mentioned it, even if Demi hadn't crashed and she'd still had that gap, I think the way that Canyon SRAM are racing, however they would have tackled the last part of that week, they would have thrown everything at it. And we've seen them do it before. We've seen them, catch SD Works out sleeping, and almost if you look at the Tour de Suisse, they almost won that race because the team wasn't supporting Demi well enough. So, you can't do that. And it's also part of bike racing. And I think Cassia dealt with it really well. And even Demi herself has said that it's awful what happened, but this is what happens in bike racing, and the blame doesn't need to fall on the riders. I think we just need to make that very clear in this situation.
Also, Cassia's had her share of bad luck in her career and crashes and getting caught out, and she's had more failures than almost anyone else in the sport, or not failures, but just lost opportunities, I guess. If there's anybody who deserved to be standing on a top step, it's Cassia, even though I don't love the term deserve to win something, because bike racing is a fight to the end, but Cassia did that. She fought to the very end. So ill-informed, like Matt said.
Being generous.
Yeah, I mean, next year is going to be amazing. 9 stages, so we get even more action, and
man,
who knows?
So many
contenders. What's going to happen.
So many. I'm curious to see what the course is going to be.
There was one more topic that Gracie wanted to touch on before we just really quickly mention L'Avenir and transfers. Gracie, you hate the special edition kits.
Well, I don't hate the kits. I hate the idea of the kits in the sense that for the men's race as well, both Tour de France's, is that it's becoming a trend for teams to do a special edition jersey for the Tour. And I think the Visma team, they do it because their kit is so yellow, and I think that's a good reason to have a different kit. But everyone else, it's kind of dumb to me because these sponsors have like put all this money in for a whole season to have the jersey, and everyone's agreed on this pro jersey that everyone wears for the whole season. And then they have the biggest event of their year and the men's race and now the women's race, one of the biggest sporting events of the year in general, where a lot of non-cycling fans tune in, and they're looking at the race and they're looking at a jersey that doesn't exist usually. And so,
such a great point.
Not great for the sponsors, for the normal sponsors for the whole season. And B, not great for those fans that will think about tuning into other races, because they're going to be so confused as to who's who after watching the Tour de France and thinking that they've got it covered, but really the kits look completely different. So I don't know much about marketing and stuff, but I just think that's actually kind of dumb.
I love this take. I mean, I think as someone who like watches cycling year round, it is kind of fun that teams get to unveil this like special edition jersey, as much as I absolutely despise the Visma Lisa Bike kit for the Tour. You could just never tell if it was Saint Michel Mavic or like it was just
that was particularly not a good example of how cool they can be, because like I said earlier, like sometimes they're really fun and I like them, but do it in a different race. Don't do it at the Tour de France.
Yeah, I think in terms of marketing,
I liked it when Canyon SRAM used to do it for like Tour Britain.
Yeah, but in terms of marketing, like the only reason I can see that there would be a lot of value is if you make this special edition kit available, or just the time of the tour or something, or there's a limited edition, certain number of kits that you can buy. And then I think then people would buy it, but that's about it. Other than that, I don't see the point. So great point, Gracie. And actually, I think EF Education is the one that seems to nail it.
Yeah, they do like a cool skater version usually, but I don't know, still, I just think like for cycling fans, like Abby said, like we kind of get excited about it, but you know, it's such a missed opportunity for the broader audience, which is really such a like that's such a huge part of the Tour de France, is you're getting like so many more people eyes on the product. And see, it's really hard for the commentators, like I'm just saying from a selfish point of view.
Was ST Works Pro Time, I think, when we arrived and we were doing the pre-podcast.
Oh, Demi walked out and we literally thought she was
Demi
just
rolling past or someone?
Kit. Yeah.
It was a Dutch national kit. Yeah. We're like, no. Maybe it's because we're in the Netherlands, you've gone all orange, but everyone was orange. It was just orange everywhere.
I mean, for EF, at least they do it for the Giro, which is, a pink jersey, but is also not as watched as the Tour. So Gracie's point about it being, the number one watched race of the year and new fans being just very confused if they then try to tune into Ploue and they're like, what am I watching?
Imagine like you've gone and bought like your favorite team's kit and then you're going to wear it at the Tour de France as a supporter and then they're not even wearing jersey.
I'm certainly not going to buy the Jayco Alula special edition kit from this year. That's pretty bad.
I don't think you're going to buy any of the kit, right?
Sometimes they're great though. Like I liked Movistar's last year, the white jersey that they wore for the Tour was cool. But you could also just have you could unveil a special, like SC Works did it in 2022 where they had a special edition jersey that they wore, I think just on the first stage, the Amy Peters jersey that they had. And then they were back in their normal kit for the rest of the race, which is arguably also confusing for new fans, but at least they get to have that jersey and they did sell that jersey with proceeds going to Amy, I'm pretty sure. So something like that is pretty cool, but
that's something else entirely. That's got real meaning and purpose behind it, not just like a marketing stuff.
Really quick. Okay, Tour de l'Avenir happened over the weekend, 4 stages. 2 of the 4 stages won by Marianne Bunel, who's coming fresh off the Tour de France Femmes with Saint Michel Mavic Aubert 93. She finished third in the youth classification of the Tour and 17th overall, and then went straight into L'Avenir and just obliterated the race. She won 2 stages convincingly, and the French team won 3 of the 4 stages. The only stage that they didn't win was the opening time trial, and it was just a lot of young talent on display. We had Isabella Holmgren, who's on Little Trek, but didn't race a ton for the World Tour team this year. She was there riding super well. She was 2nd overall at the race, and it had live coverage every single day. And it's just a race that is important to keep an eye on when thinking about the future of the sport and the women that if this podcast still exists, that we'll be talking about in 6 years time, 5 years time, or next year. Because I think Marion Bunnell is rumored to be joining Visma Lisa Bike next year.
Is there
Yeah, well, that team's folding at the end of this year, right?
One of the top.
Is there a conversation to be had about whether riders who've ridden the Tour de France should be able to race Tour de l'Avenir?
Probably on the men's side.
Like we saw last year with Shirin winning so easily.
Yeah, but the kid who won the men's race is didn't he get 4th in Brabant's Appeal or something in the elite category this year? He won the Liège-Bastogne-Liège junior race. Sorry, not junior, under 23 race. But yeah, that is a good point. I was thinking that myself. But also the fact that she backed up after the Tour de France Femmes clearly put her in good shape.
Yeah, nothing against her at all.
And then took this out.
I think there's maybe a point about World Tour riders racing L'Avenir. Like for the men's side, I know that's a huge debate that they have. But I think in terms of the women's side, there's so much growth that needs to happen before we start, limiting the number of riders that can race Tour de l'Avenir. And there's so few U23 races on the calendar to begin with that, there's so many riders in the World Tour that are under 23 that actually don't get many opportunities, like, the Holmgren sisters, for example, that having a race that is more specifically for them is only going to help their development. And we've talked a ton about the problems with development on the women's side, and we will probably continue talking about it for quite some time. But yeah, I think maybe that's a debate to have in the future when there is more resources put into the development side and there are less U23 riders that would excel at L'Avenir on World Tour teams, because Marion Bunnell isn't even on a World Tour team. She's on a continental team that's folding next year. So for her, this was a huge deal, and she probably wasn't going to go win a stage of the Tour or anything. So yeah, maybe I agree to an extent, Matt, that it's a conversation worth having, but I think it's a conversation that we could probably have down the road when there's a bit more substance to the U23 racing side.
Well, next year we're going to have our first U23 World Championship race in Rwanda. So that's going to be very interesting.
Okay, some big transfers. Just to finish off the episode, some big transfers to report. Ingvild Gaskin, who we had heard was joining SD Works Pro Time, is actually going to Uno X. She's, if people remember, she's the Norwegian rider on Live Alula Jaka, who pretty much just shocked everybody with her incredible performances earlier this year, and makes total sense that she's going to Uno X as a Norwegian rider going to a Scandinavian Norwegian team. They will have approached her very, very early in the year with an offer. I think they'll be pretty stoked to have her on the team. And Little Trek is rolling out the announcements last week and this week. Emma Norsgaard, Anna Henderson, and Rihanna Marcus are all confirmed to join Little Trek for 2025. I got an email that was like, Emma Norsgaard joins Dream Team.
Huge.
And I was like, who's Dream Team? I took a screenshot and sent it to their press officer. And I was like, who's Dream Team? Mine? Except not, because they're losing Eliza. So.
I guess this is a good segue to my question about 40 minutes ago. Weren't we expecting...
I think that's something we're going to have to talk about later.
Yeah, but wasn't everyone expecting the big Demi announcement on Monday? I was.
Lauren, we know too
Am I
much
the only one?
to talk about it on the
We
podcast.
think something's happened.
We know too much. We can't say anything. We'll talk about it next week. We'll talk about Demi's potential teams next week. For now, we'll wrap it up with what we're obsessed with. Ooh, did you forget about it?
My kids. I'm just obsessed with my kids this week because 9 days away was quite a long time. So I'm just going to go with the child card today.
Yep, it's hard not to. I get it now. I'm obsessed as well. I'm also obsessed with my post-baby body and trying to be obsessed in a healthy way. So I've gone out and bought some clothes that are a couple of sizes bigger than normal, and that's okay. I just want to look nice. I've been wearing the same leggings for months, even before the baby came out. So it's time to like feel good again and embrace a body that it will never be the same again. But I'm happy about that.
And were you out riding again for the first time or something recently, Gracie? Out on the road?
Yeah, I've been out a couple of times. I went on my road and then on the mountain bike for the first time on the weekends. That was pretty nice. My Velocio kit's pretty snug, but it fits. So I'm getting out and very much enjoying it. And that kit is good. It can stretch a lot.
The like zipperless jerseys are the best because those ones really stretch. When they first came
did
out.
I tip you off with that years ago? That's what is it called? Yeah,
they're good.
I wore that through my whole pregnancy. The first one.
I'm obsessed with cooking because being on the road in France while pregnant for a week is no easy feat. So I'm really excited to be back in my own kitchen and cooking again. And I made some tacos the other night that were like amazing, and included one of my favorite recipes. That's like a creamed corn, like a Parmesan cream corn recipe. It's inspired by like the Mexican cream corn, like street cream corn that you can get a lot in a lot of places in the US. Yeah, I made it last night to complement the tacos, and it was really, really good. There's a similar recipe on Bon Appetit that I can link in the show notes. But I'm a big fan.
I'm a bit slow to the party, but I've finally caught up with Ted Lasso. It took me years, but good
job.
My partner Imogen and I have been watching it over the last month or so, and we just finished what we thought was the final episode the other night. But just today, it's been confirmed that it's getting a 4th season, so that's really exciting. It's great. I mean, basically everyone listening will have seen it by now, I'm sure, but anyone that hasn't, just watch it. It's great. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
I have not seen it, but it's not available on any of my streaming services.
Really?
I think you can get it on Apple, right?
I'm so excited about the 4th season, but they, just get can you get a trial?
Pay for
it.
Just get a
trial?
month.
You can watch 3 seasons in 1 week.
Don't you need? Oh wait, I've got an iPad.
No, they wrapped up.
I do have one Apple product. I used to have an Apple iPad, a laptop, sorry, but yeah, it died.
They wrapped up the 3rd season so well that I don't know what they're going to do to kind of open that box again. And originally, I think Jason Sudeikis wasn't going to return as an actor. Like, I assume he'll always be like on the writing side, producing side. But I thought it was only going to be, 3 of the main characters that were returning. But yeah, I saw this morning that Jason Sudeikis is reprising his role as Ted Lasso. So I wonder how that's going to work because they just did such a great job of kind of tying all the bows.
Yeah. Yeah, they really did.
I'm sure they can untie them. I'm glad that there's more.
I know. It's like one of the shows that you're just like, you know what? I don't care. Just give me more banter. Yeah. Give me more feels.
Gracie, I think your SBS team was talking about that TV show. I overheard them talking about it or making like references to it. I don't even know what the show is about.
I'll send you the commercial that spurred the entire show. You'll get a taste.
I was watching those today. So good.
All right, we're going to wrap up the episode. Thanks everyone so much for listening. We'll be back next week. We don't have a World Tour race over the weekend, although we do have Tour de Romandy coming up the following weekend. So if anyone has any questions for us, you can submit your questions to escapecollective.com/hello to the Wheel Talk podcast in particular, and we'll get a voice memo from you with your questions, which is just super fun. So we can do that next week. If you have any questions, you can also drop them in the Discord. Tag Loren if you drop them in the Discord, and we will answer any questions you got next week. Thanks, you three, for a great episode.